So good afternoon, everyone, to this second webinar organised by the Heritage Council. And of course, it's all about Heritage Week, which is happening, as you know, in August. So this is where we get down and dirty, where we work out exactly how to put our great plan into action, how we physically do this in the online stratosphere. For some of us, this comes very easily, and for others, it's a little more challenging. I'm putting myself in the other bracket here as finding it challenging, but I know we've assembled a group today who are going to take some of the difficulty away from that, and also to remind you that they continue to be available to support you, because it's in everybody's interest to make Heritage Week the best that it can be. So we're going to start with Thelma Harris, and Thelma has the enjoyable task of explaining how exactly you can upload your project, your idea, your endeavour to the Heritage Week website. So Thelma, it's your floor.
Thanks, Susan, and good afternoon, everyone. As Susan said, my name is Thelma and I work with DHR Communications, and we have the lovely job of working with the Heritage Council to deliver National Heritage Week 2021. Just like during last year's Heritage Week, for 2021, we are asking you to share your projects via the project organisers portal on the Heritage Week website. Introducing the project element last year was challenging for project organisers, adding that extra element of, bringing all your research together and then having to share that online. But what we found from the Heritage Week office was that it gave all of you that work so hard during Heritage Week, usually on your events, the opportunity to take a step back and to really enjoy the projects that other organisers had created. So there's definitely advantages of going online, and that's just one of them. So this afternoon, I'm going to give you a short introduction of the technical side of sharing your project with us, and where you'll find more information and resources on how to upload your project. And at this stage, I'd just say that, as we go through the slides this afternoon, that if there's anything that you're not sure of, or if things seem just a little bit overwhelming, maybe, that the National Heritage Week team are here either by phone or by email to support you. So don't get too overwhelmed. So I'm just going to share my slides here. So the first thing to take into consideration is that if you participated in Heritage Week last year, you can use the same login details for Heritage Week this year. And if you've forgotten your password or anything, you'll be able to reset that at the homepage of the project organisers portal. And if there's any issues there, please do get in touch with us. So for new organisers, there is the step-by-step instruction on how to create an account on the project organisers registration page on the website. And you can access that by going to Organise a Project. So this is on heritageweek.ie, and then click on Register as a Project Organiser. That'll bring you to this page, and then just complete the form, and you'll see that's 1 and 2. So it really is step by step. And so you complete the form and just create a password. So once you've signed into the project organisers portal, you'll see this layout. So we have edit your profile, and that's where you'd go to maybe update your contact details, or if someone else was taking over the project, you could change details there. And then we have resources. So resources are broken into 3 sections. Developing your project. This is where you'll find ideas on how to create your project, so project ideas and resources to help you create a really informed and engaging project. And I would say to you at this stage, if you have something in mind, still take a look at developing your project, because it might just give you that extra idea to help you elevate your project. And then the last one on that list is branded resources. So this is where you'll find Heritage Week logos, newsletter templates, a press release template if you're going out to local media, and items that might include a branded Zoom background. And these are all designed to help you elevate your heritage project to a National Heritage Week project. And then in the center, we have technical resources. So this is what we're going to focus on this afternoon. Under technical resources, you will find a selection of videos and documents to help you create and upload your National Heritage Week project. As you plan your project, it's worth taking a look at this section to see if there are any formats you may not have considered that would work well for your project. Then, when you've completed your project and are ready to share it on heritageweek.ie, we recommend that you watch the video on how to upload the project to the website and also to download the step-by-step instructions. So in front of us, then you'll see the various videos, and then up here you'll see those step-by-step documents that you can download as well. So we just recommend that you have those to hand when you go about navigating the website and uploading your project. So if we return to the home page of the organisers portal, when you're ready to share your project online, click Submit Your Project and complete the form with all the relevant details. So it'll ask you things like, tell us about yourself or your organisation that you're submitting the project from, some project details, the links to your outputs, your project outputs, and then there'll be a form on the National Heritage Awards application. So that's all in the one form. So you just have to complete this once. And it's really important to note at this stage, so this is, I know, a lot of information, but if you remember one thing from this section is if you spend too long completing the form, it might time out on you. And we're seeing this happen over the last few weeks. And if it times out, then you won't be able to save what you've already submitted. So what we're recommending for you to do is to type the answers or the responses to the questions in the form into a Word document and copy your responses over. And that just means you won't lose any material that you've shared with us, rather than filling in the boxes as you go along. So that's really important, that you start with your Word document and copy and paste your responses over. So you can share your project in most formats. For videos, websites, social media pages, the URL is fine. So when I say a URL, I mean the www.myfamilyhistoryproject.ie. Or the YouTube link. So they're fine. However, if your project is a Word document, a PDF, or an audio file, you will need to create an embed code. And this is it's a different link to the URL. And to do this, you must upload your project first, or your outputs, or your document, whether it's the PDF, the Word document, or the audio file, to your Google Drive, and then generate this embed code. And this is where those step-by-step instructions will come in really handy. So it's all mapped out there, and it's quite easy to do. You just need to know the steps. So we would recommend that if you're going down that route of sharing the embed code with us, that you would either print those instructions or you would have them on screen and just have them to hand, so to be able to follow it through. And again, we're here if you come into any difficulties and we can talk you through it, but it's always good to have those instructions to hand. And I just remind you that that's where they are. So you go back to the technical resources and you just click those pink links then to download the link or to download the document. And just if you're not sure about embed codes, I have just a sample here of one from last year. And so it won't start with www. It'll start with that iframe and it will end with the iframe. So that's how you know it's an embed code. And so that's your introduction to the Heritage Week website. I've kept it as brief but as informative as I could. Just before I finish up, there's 3 things that I really want you to take away from the few minutes this afternoon. So the first one is that if you are returning as a project organizer, you can use your same details, but if you're a new organizer this year, so one of our heritage newcomers, you will need to first register as a project organizer, and that's all mapped out for you on the Heritage Week website. The second one is that if you're sharing a PDF or a Word document or an audio file, you will need to create that embed code, and the instructions that we have, the little step-by-step guides, will be invaluable to you. And again, we're here if you need any more support or if you need to ask us any questions on that. And then the last one, and again, super important, when you're completing the form to submit your project, please type it in a Word document and copy it over. It'll just save any issues if something comes up. So that's my technical side, and I'll pass you over to Susan now.
Thanks so much, Thelma, and you've made it seem, I think, at least in fairness, accessible and something people can have a go at, and with the reassurance, of course, that you're there for advice and support. There's a relevant question at this point, which I'll take now, which is, the question is, would you recommend doing a live presentation during Heritage Week, or is it better to upload a pre-recorded talk for the week?
So it depends. We would have seen both come into Heritage Week last year. If you really want to if you want to engage your audience with the Q&A, you wouldn't be able to do that if it was pre-recorded. So it depends on the level of engagement you're looking for. A lot of people would have done videos, which would be very similar to pre-recorded presentations. And they're really nice because you can revisit them again and again, but you miss out on the Q&A. So what you might even consider is, if you're nervous about content, if you're not the most confident presenter, or if your connection, we're not all in locations where your internet connection can sustain a live event, you might consider recording your presentation and playing it during a live event. And just if you were looking at doing that then and worried about the internet connection, you could make sure that a few people had that video and were willing to put it up for you during the time that the event was scheduled for. And I think Madeline might have a few suggestions on that as well when she comes in on the panel later.
Okay, so that's a really good suggestion, to try to think of whether you want an interactive situation with people asking questions, which can be great, but not always essential, or whether you want the capacity to have something that people can go back and enjoy if you've recorded it and it's a short video and people can watch it in their own time. And of course, as Thelma says, perhaps you could even try both and have the video and then have a live session with the videos. So there's 3 options there, and all seem perfectly doable, I think. So thank you for that, Thelma. Now we're going to have Shirley Clerkin, and Shirley is the Heritage Officer with Monaghan County Council. She declares herself to be passionate about all aspects of heritage, but particularly biodiversity. And she is here because she has a good knowledge and experience of using social media during Heritage Week for an event last year, Heritage Happening. She loves social media. And she, like Thelma, I think, is here to give you a feel for and an introduction to some of the thoughts and ideas that you might be able to use. Some of you will be very familiar and using social media a lot, and others less so. And of course, if it's your first time registering with Heritage Week, you may not have used social media at all in this particular way. So Shirley's here to bring, as I said, to bring her passion and her experience to this subject. Shirley.
Thanks, Susan, and thank you, everybody. Good afternoon from Monaghan, and I'm here to sort of give, I suppose, some tips and tricks on why social media will benefit you and your project. And, I run a few different social media accounts, and I'm not going to go into the technicalities of them, but maybe the atmosphere that you need to create when you're doing your social media and why that atmosphere is important. So last year, I did a project for a number of months running right up to Heritage Week called Heritage Happenings. And it covered a wide range of media. So I used the website, Facebook, Twitter, and even Instagram to cross-reference all the posts to drive people towards the website really, or to drive them towards the Facebook page. And I covered a wide range of topics from traditional Irish grazing with cattle, butterflies, buildings made of tin, place names, graveyards, headstone symbolism. I covered such a wide range of topics, all locally, all with local information, but often with a national or international relevance. And you can really do that with social media. And so I have a few tips and tricks here about using social media. And the first thing I'll say is that Facebook is very easy to use. You can put up a photograph and a good bit of text. And if you're using Facebook for that, what I'd say is write it on Word, so you have it and you've saved it, and then cut and paste. That's the easiest way to go about it. And then my tip number one is, very high tech here, keep it original. And you might think, oh my God, I can't be original. Sure, everybody has a heritage site like me or a heritage story like mine, but that is not true. Every place has a unique set of heritage values. It doesn't matter where it is or who's involved, every place has. And your own local story in and itself will be original. And bring that to it. Don't try to be like everybody else. Mention the things that are relevant to your place. So whether that's the place names and the meaning of them, or describing the local landscape, or even talking to local members of your group, for example, and asking them why they like their place, because that will be original from them. So be original. There is no one like you or your place. And people will find that very interesting, because I think it's to stimulate curiosity and the sense of discovery. And that's what Heritage Week is all about. So be original. Second tip, be local. Now you might say this is kind of similar, and it is, but in the localness, you can drive into a lot of really interesting local detail that other people will find fascinating, and it might actually bring them to your locality, you know, when people feel more relaxed about traveling, to go and see what the important local thing is in your area. Like, for example, in Monaghan, we have a set of very interesting mortality symbols on our headstones that really are only found in South Ulster. So, for example, that would be very keeping it local. Obviously, the national theme there would be graveyards, maybe the conservation of graveyards, ancestry, all of that. But by bringing forth those little snippets with local photographs, local stories, maybe who the stonemason was, you know, why the church was set up there in the first place, what your local saint's name is, all of that local detail, you might think everyone knows it. They actually don't. They're not aware of it until you say it. So, you know, say the obvious. Sometimes people don't actually know. Tip number 3, be quirky and informative. And this is particularly important on Twitter. So Facebook allows you to write, you know, a nice blog piece. So you can write a little story and make it a story piece about, you know, maybe your project or an element of your project or your place or someone in your group or whatever. So that's maybe a longer piece. But for Twitter, you need to be a little bit quirky and interesting in order to make your Twitter tweets travel, because then people will retweet it, they'll laugh, they'll have a moment of joviality, but they'll also be informed about something as well. So often what I was doing was using a play on words for my Twitter tweets last year, like Heritage Happenings has moved to Slieve Bay to the herd of traditional cattle, you know, or we're riveted by the tin church in Lara. So a play on words, and I know it's a bit cheesy, but actually it works, and you can be informative at the same time. So, you know, be quirky. Tip number 4, photos. So photos travel really well, obviously. and take your own local photos and put them up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And photos of your local place, you know, animals, plants, your archival material inside your place, you know, even whatever headstones, and even your local community group or your heritage group. Take photographs of them explaining something or with a piece of your heritage and say, this is Shirley, she's in our group, you know, she's really interested in keeping her notes on her stick here. But keep them clear, local, and about people and place, and tag them really well, and put a description on them and a little caption. And that in itself can actually travel, because people often only read a caption and people are very visually engaged. And I know these are very simple tips, but these actually, when I looked at my social media accounts to see what worked and what traveled and what got the most engagement and impressions, and I've had thousands of impressions. Some of my posts had 30,000 engagements when they traveled around the world, and that's bringing people to Monaghan virtually. So if you also think about it like that, I think it's really nice. It's a way of keeping people safe and actually bringing them to your place at the moment as well. And tip number 5, which is my last tip, is tagging. So tag the Heritage Council, tag Heritage Week, and tag your local press. So in my example, I would be tagging the Northern Sound Radio, for example, and I would be tagging the Northern Standard newspaper in my posts, both on Facebook and on Twitter, because they're always looking for really interesting local content. And they then often retweet or pass on the information to their audiences. So you're then all actually getting out into the press's audience, and particularly a younger audience that follow the press on social media, but would never buy a local newspaper. So it's a really good way of intergenerational, you know, engagement, in fact. And, you know, younger people love to find out information that older people have as well. So don't feel like you're out of the loop by engaging in social media. It's a fascinating way of engaging and getting questions in, and you can also respond to questions on Facebook. So, you know, I find that, you know, just follow these 5 simple tips, and hopefully it will help you. And don't do anything too complicated, but bear in mind your place is original, your story is original, your people, your place, it all has those unique set of heritage values, cultural, natural, historic, social, technical, whatever it happens to be. And by you explaining that in these ways through your project and then onto social media, you can actually really help engage people with heritage locally in your area and further afield, and build advocacy for it, which I think is really important part of Heritage Week. You know, we want more people to be engaged with this, and you do too. So my advice is, you know, try it. It's no harm in trying it, you know, start small. Okay, that's it.
Terrific. Thanks a million, Shirley. And I suppose it is the case that when you're leading into your project as well, while you're maybe preparing it for Heritage Week, you know, some tweets about the people that have become involved in your project. Some of them may have been people who have never told a story before. And, you know, a little photograph of them, or if you're able to use the video on Twitter or Facebook, you know, 20 seconds of them talking about their experience or why they've got involved in the project can also be a lovely way of you know, sharing the project as it's being created, as well as the project itself and all that brings. And so, you know, Shirley's right, keeping it local, remembering that your stories are unique, remembering that while somebody may have heard a little bit of it before or a fraction of it somewhere else, hearing it again, particularly from people who remember the story for real in their own lives, is a great way of sharing stories and including people. And remember, the theme we discussed at length last week, and rightly so, is that Heritage Week wants to be inclusive. And that means including everyone, bringing younger people in by hearing stories, bringing older people in by allowing them to tell their stories, and bringing people who are not Irish not born here, new Irish people who've come to settle and live here, to bring them in through some common themes that we all share across the globe, wherever we are. So one question I have, Shirley, before we move on to Madeline, is that if you feel very competent with one social media part, perhaps it's Facebook or Twitter, and you don't feel able to go across Instagram as well, are you better to stick to one and do it well, or should you branch out because, well, this is your golden opportunity because you've got something you actually want to share?
Well, I think there's certainly benefit if you're good on Facebook. There's a particular audience that really follows Facebook, and it's an older audience. The younger audience has moved towards, Twitter or Instagram, so they're very visual. So if you want to engage with younger audiences, I would suggest trying Twitter. And Twitter is really easy, actually. It's actually simpler than Facebook. It's just that you're in a habit of going with Facebook, so you know how it works. But Twitter is actually easier, and you can let your sense of humor, your politically correct sense of humor rip on Twitter and with really good photographs. And I think I would give it a go. I think it is an opportunity. There's a lot of followers following the Heritage Week and the Heritage Council at the moment, and building up to Heritage Week. So I would say it's a golden opportunity to branch out.
Good. Well, there you have it from someone who has lots of experience. Branch out. And keep it simple. Start with words if that's what you're most comfortable with. Start with a photograph if you feel most comfortable with that, and add your own little bit of explanation. And soon you'll find people love good photographs on Twitter. So now we come to someone who does have an extraordinary story to tell. And Madeline Hutchins is the great grand niece of Ireland's first female botanist, Ellen Hutchins. And as Madeline will tell you, the great part about Ellen's story is not simply that she was the first botanist, but that she was an untold story. She very much fits into what Shirley's just been talking about. You might think, well, there's been lots of botanists, yes, but we didn't know about Ellen, and the fact that she was the first, and the fact that she lived way back at the turn of the 18th and 19th century. What a great story to be able to share, and to have it from someone who's part of the original family, as Madeline obviously is. So Madeline runs the Ellen Hutchins Festival, which last year went online for the first time, and so she's here to share some of the experience of what it was like to put an exhibition, a festival they already had up and running since 2015, and make it work online. And so she's going to make it work again online this year, I think. So she's very brave, but she's come to give us the best of her experience. And we welcome you, Madeline, all the way from Surrey.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, as you said, last year we moved our 9-day Ellen Hutchins Festival online for the first time. And we were fairly much beginners, almost absolute beginners in this. Usually the festival is in the Bantry Bay area of West Cork. It covers the story of Ireland's first female botanist, who was also a botanical artist of great talent. And we usually do walks, talks, workshops, boat trips on botany, botanical art, and the biodiversity of the area. What we chose to do was to give, in the online version in 2020, was to take a theme for each day. And most of the events were actually DIY, as in self-guided walks, using materials that we'd already published. So using our own little sort of festival archive, really, heritage trail and things. And some days we did a release of a pre-recorded video in the morning to fit with the theme, the botanical art one, for instance. And they were new materials we'd developed. And then we ran 3 live Zoom events, and we held a competition, which we'd never done before. And I think really the going online successfully, it's a question of spotting the useful differences that come with the different format, and then using those differences to advantage, rather than just doing a sort of a half-baked version of the live. We did keep to our original plan of a panel discussion on Ellen as inspiration, because a historical novel had been published based on her story, and the event needed to happen then, not later. We had a host in conversation with the novelist and a poet who'd been inspired by Ellen's letters. The novelist was in her writing room in her home, and it felt quite a privilege to be with her in that setting. The host is a key figure on these events, live or online, and she was very good. She was very well prepared, and she handled the session brilliantly for us. We did a rehearsal the day before at the same time of day or evening, so that the lighting conditions would be similar and we could check out how things were looking and sounding. And we pulled 2 friends in as participants to the rehearsal who gave us feedback afterwards. And that event really was just 3 people talking and reading extracts from the novel and the poems, and there were no strong visuals. So what I did was I showed some of Ellen's letters just to show people, and handled them a bit as a little bit of an extra. The whole session worked really well, and it generated some very interesting questions. I think we got more and better questions than if we'd been all together in a room somewhere. I think the fact that people were in their home settings and could compose the questions on the chat function really helped. Another talk we programmed was on costumes and customs, women's lives in the early 1800s. The historical reenactor and costume maker that we used was in her sewing shed, wearing one costume and with a mannequin behind her wearing another. Again, a lovely setting. It was a fairly traditional PowerPoint presentation, but I think you could see the images more clearly on screen at home than if we'd been in a venue. We also found that on the pre-recorded videos that we did, demonstrating a craft skill, or showing botanical art, or showing children's nature art, they benefited hugely from the closeness of the camera to the craftsperson or the artist's hands. So not only seeing the physical things, but seeing the process. The artist used time-lapse on hers. She just recorded it on a phone and put music over it. And on the others, the craftsperson was giving an explanation of the process. We had audiences from everywhere. Indonesia, Mexico, Italy, Switzerland, vast majority Ireland, but it was rather nice having that ability. It was great for reconnecting to people who'd moved away, or those who'd had a glancing contact with the festival when visiting family in the area. And also those who would have had difficulty coming to a live event for all sorts of access issues. One nice little comment on chat was, "I must leave now to put kids to bed." And we got some lovely feedback, and the volume of feedback was much more than we would have had from a live event. We recorded the events, we tinkered with them a bit. I didn't realise how much you could edit and actually put in new PowerPoint images afterwards, and then are available online as a useful legacy from the festival. I don't think I'm an expert, but I know I'm not an expert, but I've taken some steps down that road of going online and have learned a lot on the way. And I'm very happy to share more of my thoughts of the process.
Great, thanks so much, Madeline. I have to say that really is inspiring to go from no online experience really and not having done it before to really connecting and creating sort of the best of what you had. Can I ask you before we go to other questions, is whether or not there was a higher cost to doing the festival online, or was it not noticeably different?
It was different, but no, we did it. I mean, we run on a very small budget anyway. And so no, it probably was cheaper because, one thing we did choose to use webinar on the Zoom, not wanting to leap into technical details, but the 2 choices of meetings or webinar. And webinar does have a significant cost attached to it. And the Zoom website doesn't show that VAT's involved, so that gets added at the last minute. And that was certainly surprisingly more than we'd expected to be paying. I think as beginners, it was useful to have the support of the webinar structure. But other things I've done, I'm half of the village history group where I live, and we cannot possibly afford the webinar option. We use meetings. So, but no, so that was the surprise cost, I suppose.
Yes, and of course, when you're starting something, you can't possibly think of all the things. So that's possibly a useful observation for others who may not wish to fall foul of that one. but you've survived to tell the tale and you've shared the experience, for which thank you. There's a question here, somebody would like to know, so thank you, Madeline. When does the festival run?
During the Heritage Week.
During Heritage Week.
Yeah. This year we're actually doing half and half. We're doing online for the first few days, and then we're going live from the Wednesday to the Saturday. That's been our sort of, yeah, our compromise for this year.
Okay, the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Excellent. So there's a question, perhaps Thelma is best to answer this. Someone's asking if they can upload multiple videos.
Yeah, so when you go to the form to submit your project on the website, you'll put in your first video link. And this is if the videos are all related to the one project. But you'll fill in the first video link line, and then there's just a plus under that. And you can keep adding videos until you have them all of your videos uploaded. Great,
so there's no issue there at all. Is there a kind of length at all that you advise, or is it literally as long as the event or the session takes?
Yeah, so it depends what kind of video you're sharing. If it's an event video, depending on the structure as well. So you could just upload your Zoom recording onto the page. Or if you were a little bit more savvy with video editing, you could snip it into sections. So if you had speeches, you could pull those out, clip them out, and have them as standalone videos, and then have maybe a panel as your last video. And that just makes things more digestible. So if you have the skill or the capacity to do that, I'd recommend that you do that. And then if you're looking at sharing things on social media, each of the platforms have a preferred length for video. So to take that into consideration as well. So if you're using Instagram, say, because I know that there's another question on Instagram, but if you're using that, the max video length for Instagram proper is 1 minute. And then you're opening up to this Instagram TV, and that's where your longer videos would go. So just there's a few things to take into consideration, but I would say if you can snip it into those shorter clips, it just makes it more digestible for anyone that's going through your project.
Great. And okay, and our colleague Lelia has pointed out, of course, that Instagram is terrific for high quality, eye-catching images. It really is the image space on social media. You can write longer text, and people do, but really it is about the images that people generally use Instagram for. And of course, you can tag the relevant organizations there as well. And she's suggesting if you have multiple paragraphs, start with a snappy sentence so that you're grabbing people's attention. But again, don't worry too much. You know, thinking about a good photograph, that can often be the thing that will draw people in, and then they're prepared to read a little more. Shirley, someone has asked if you would be kind enough to quickly repeat your 5 top tips, because I think what's attracted people is that they're very clear and very easy. So maybe you might just once again.
No problem. I'll put them on a list here. Here we are. I'll hold them all up. I'll tie them all together. So very high tech bit of Postit here. So
yeah, we like this abuse of technology by going back to low tech. Go on.
Well, you know, that's why I think we can think about low tech as well and use it. You know, we don't always need to have a PowerPoint slide. You know, there are other ways. So be original. So we were talking about every place having its unique set of values. So very much like the great-great-great-grandaunt of Madeline there, you know, to bring that story forward. I mean, that's an original story, and there are people like that all over the country, and they may have done something locally significant or nationally significant, you know, or even people who've even conserved a heritage site in the past. I mean, think about them as well. They're worth talking to and interacting with. So be original. Every place has its unique set of values. Be local, because it's the local stories that really resonate with people and that really do, you know, gain traction, because they're rooted in a local place, and you can bed them down into your landscape, into your place names, you know, into your community. And people like to see something about their own place so quickly. So be quirky and informative, particularly for Twitter, and even for your snappy line if you're using Instagram. And on Facebook, you can use a bit more blocky of a text. But I would say be story-based. Try to get a story into it. Even if you have a few facts that you want to get over, try and weave it into some sort of a nice story format so it's nice for people to read. Tip 4, photographs. Always use them if you can, and make them clear photographs, local, with people and place. Don't forget that. And I know somebody mentioned GDPR requirements, but obviously, if you have a photograph, I've that embedded in that idea of a photograph. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying do that. And then tag the relevant agencies. So the Heritage Council, Heritage Week, and your local press. And indeed, organisations like the National Biodiversity Data Centre, the archives, even the National Museum, cultural institutions. Think about other organisations that might be relevant. So, for example, the Botanist Society would be relevant to Madeline, or you might find that it's a local costume or a craft link that you want to tie in, or somebody who makes local, tweed or whatever. You can tie it into those kind of things as well. And it really does help bring your story out, which is what we want to do. We want to promote our local heritage. So those are my 5 exciting tips.
Thanks a million, Shirley. So let's just, if we can have a little bit of clarity, I don't know, maybe this is you, Thelma, about the issue of GDPR. Is it an issue for people who are including photographs where people are obviously, clearly them? Do you know what the rules are? If you shoot, let's say you're just shooting a random shot of people at a building or people at an event or something, and you want to put it on your Facebook or your Twitter, what do you understand the situation to be?
So if you're doing it at an event, so if you're hosting an event and you want to take photographs of it, it's good to inform everyone that's there that you are going to take the photographs, and if they'd like to opt out of being included, then they can present themselves to you and say, I don't want to be in any of the photographs. And you could do that during your registration form. So if there was a little tick box just to say, that I'm aware that photographs will be taken and I'm happy with that. Or you can put up signs around the event, just print off, photographs will be taken. And if you're not comfortable being in them, please, let that be known to the event organisers. Maybe Shirley, do you have any comments on historical photos, I suppose? And by that, I don't mean pure historical, but ones that you have maybe from previous events or pre-GDPR.
I don't actually know what the situation is pre-GDPR, but if a photograph is already out there for some time, it loses its copyright, if you know what I mean. But from the point of view of holding an actual event, we would generally put up the signs to say we're taking photographs, and if you wish to opt out, to talk to someone at the event to say you don't want to be in the photograph. But usually if you're with a local group and you're taking a photograph, you're saying, let's all stand here now and take a photograph at the graveyard gate or the gable wall of the medieval church or whatever, and you're saying, I'm going to put this up on Twitter, and everybody goes, oh yeah, that's great, let's put it up. So everybody's agreeing at that stage. Obviously GDPR issues around children are completely different, so obviously if we're usually taking photographs of children, it would usually only be their hands or something like that in the water, or their backs, looking at insects in water or something like that, you know what I mean? We wouldn't be photographing faces or anything like that unless we'd express, parental permission. And then maybe you wouldn't identify them either, as to who they are.
I think that's good advice. Yeah, the children particularly, when in doubt, don't. So if you have a photograph and you're not sure and you're thinking, no, don't use it, because it's simply never worth the grief. You don't know what effect it might have on the people concerned, but I can tell you it will also bring grief to your own door that you then have to deal with, which can tangle you up for the sake of a photograph that you're not sure about. So it's largely common sense as well. And if it's children, as Shirley says, don't, unless you have the express permission of the parent or guardian or whatever. And nicely, sometimes the photograph with the parent or guardian with the child is the best solution to that one. I wonder if I could ask Madeline about, you talked to Madeline about the great feedback that you'd had, and you felt that there had been not only good questions because people potentially were at home and able to craft it a little better, but what did you do? How did you use the feedback? Apart from sort of basking in some of the moments of lovely things that I'm sure people shared with you, and that's no harm at all. But what did you do with the feedback to help you for this year? And how was there anything about the feedback that spurred you on to try something new?
Yes, I think it did. I mean, I did a little report afterwards, and I suppose the first real value was sending it to the speakers, the people who'd put the time and effort in without fees, to being there for the event and making the event happen. So I think they got that confirmation, really, that they'd done a good job and that people had really enjoyed it. And again, useful for the funders. To be able to have, you know, that genuine, rather than your report of a conversation afterwards, it's on an email or it's from the chat function, and certainly making sure you've captured the chat before you lose it. And the way the systems work, slightly different for webinars and meetings, but just getting someone getting their head around the technology enough to make sure you've got it, you've recorded it. And then, yes, I mean, look, I've pulled them back out as we're planning this year's events. And certainly the thing, I mean, like Shirley using her little tips, we found that the physical thing of showing the physical items of the letters and handling the things and showing it's that mix of the old tech, the low tech, and the new and the high tech, the old and the new, that people really liked. And doing that something to surprise and delight, adding that little bit of a something, and making something of the setting if it was relevant to the event.
I think that's really interesting advice, that idea of holding something up. Even if we can't touch it, we can see that you're touching it for real. It's not just a photograph, because of course part of our lives online has been that there's endless images and they don't feel, they're not three-dimensional, and they lose the impact on us. So I think that's I think that's something that came through very strongly, that building in the 3D where you can. Yes, so, really useful, low tech, but perfect piece of advice. Yes, Ailish is pointing out that, just in case someone hasn't seen it, that historical photos in Google Images advanced settings, you can check whether there's a Creative Commons license, as it's called, meaning that it's free to use. So if you're using images that are not yours, that can be very helpful, particularly for things. But hopefully for a lot of these heritage projects that you guys are involved with, you will be seeking your own images from among yourselves and the locations that you're working in. Could I go back and ask Thelma, when you said, Thelma, and to be fair, you emphasized it a number of times, that, you know, people are free to call you and the resources there. Do you mean that to the extent that if people are literally sitting trying to follow the instructions? I'm thinking of myself here, of course. It's a purely selfish question. That if we're literally stuck and can't make it work, that's okay. That you'll make us welcome if we're completely hopeless.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and so there's the email address, which is heritageweek@heritagecouncil.ie. So we man that, and if there's any specific questions that you have, feel free to email us. But you might also want to request maybe a call at a particular time. And we can do that. So if you're saying, oh, well, I'm going to sit down at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday and submit my Heritage Week project, and I keep coming across the same issue, if I sit down at that time, can I give you a call when I'm doing it? And we'd be happy to walk through that with you. And we also have the Heritage Week phone number, and I'm just trying to, I don't have that to hand at the moment, but I'll pop it into the chat. It's just a mobile number, and you'll get us at that as well. And if we don't answer, just leave a voicemail and we'll phone you back.
Because as I often think when I'm phoning organisations for assistance, I have to bring a picnic with me, because it takes so long to get through to lots of organisations now.
Oh no, I hope that's not the Heritage Week experience. Yeah, exactly. And I actually see Lila has shared the number. So if you want to write it down, it's 087 368 3515, and it's in the chat as well. Yes, great. So yeah, so the effect of repeating music and the endless time that passes. So we're guaranteeing Heritage Council will not treat you like that. Shirley, you talked also a bit about
you know, the idea that Facebook allows you to write a bit more, perhaps than Twitter or Instagram. What would you say about using a press release around your, I mean, you could be lucky, and local newspapers, as you say, and local radio stations also always looking for something a bit quirky, a bit original. Do you advise that if someone's using a lot of social media, that they might turn that into a press release that they could send, even if it's 2 paragraphs, pretty much what they've written for Facebook, and email it to the local press? Would that be a useful thing?
Absolutely, yes. And if you're doing that, you know, just paste it directly into your email with, you know, a heading. You know, don't make the journalist have to click another click to get to the meat of what you're saying. And I certainly would recommend that, yeah. And I think that actually is a very good complement to the Facebook posts in particular. It works very well. It's very complimentary because they are text, you know, and they are story based, so they're interesting. And make friends with a few of your local journalists, you know, as well. Absolutely.
So if you're doing the cut and paste thing that you recommended for Facebook, you can cut and paste and make a press release. If you've got something, either a new person to talk about it or something that you're about to do for Heritage Week. Yeah,
absolutely. Cool. And if you embed it very much in the local place, particularly for the rural newspapers, and they do have local, you know, they cover different local areas on different pages. So, you know, you can kind of filter it through the coverage for that particular area. And you'll get maybe have more luck getting it into the papers. But I find newspapers are very good at covering stories, as are the local sections, or the kind of the news round sections in the radio stations as well. The local radio stations are always looking for interesting content. So I think that's a very good place to go to as well.
Yeah, we have a very good online group here on Facebook in Sligo, the Historical and Heritage group, and they have thousands of followers, and people just love to share all local photographs and questions. Do you recognize the person in this photograph? And oh, I found this the other day. And so they're great to be, you know, they're involved year round in sharing local heritage. And other locations may have similar organizations, history groups, field groups, archaeology groups, that are perhaps smaller, but they're literally digging away on a constant basis, and getting to know some of them may bring some expertise to your group too, if you're new and you're trying it for the first time. So that's another way perhaps of reaching out.
Yes, I would say reach out to other, you know, if you're an archaeological society and you're in Birr or wherever, reach out to an archaeological society in Louth. You know, if you're doing a project, you know, you can do that so easily through social media to increase, you know, what maybe is known about your place, but also to involve a new audience for your place, so that when things open up a bit more, you know, you might have a field trip, or swap field trips, or swap conservation tips and advice on best practice, for example. And I think, you know, it's a bit like, you know, when you used to go on cross-border cooperative trips where you go and visit communities north and south. It's a bit like that. It's very much cooperation. So I think there's a lot of new partnerships and friendships that can be made, actually starting off with social media.
Yeah, that's very true. Thelma, finally, what if your project will not be completed for Heritage Week? Now, I know we addressed this last week, but I'm sure there are people here this week that were not here last week, and it's a very good question and a fair question.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are accepting heritage projects as part of Heritage Week until the 30th of August, which is the week after Heritage Week finishes. And the reason that we've extended that deadline a little bit is to allow people that have organised projects, but the output of the project won't be available or ready to share until after Heritage Week. So if you can get that to us by the 30th of August, you'll be eligible to be considered for the National Heritage Awards, which take place every year. And then maybe in this case as well, I get the sense that there might even be, this might be the beginning of a heritage journey, and that there may be the final output may not be ready by the 30th of August. And I'm sure there's so many people on the call who feel that their heritage work is never completed, and you're always adding to that. So I think that's totally normal. And even if you want to just share with us, if your project is a description of what you're working on. So we don't need to see the results, but we would just like to get an idea of the kind of activities that you're looking at, or the research that you're doing. And it's fine to share that with us as well. And maybe you have a website, or you have a social media page, maybe a Facebook page, and you know, that's the output. is you're saying, well, we're working away on this heritage project. And, you know, if you want to just keep up to date with what we're doing, check out Facebook or Twitter or our website.
Thank you. That's great, Thelma. And before we say goodbye, you might just, Thelma, give us a note about the webinar at 3 p.m. today.
Yeah, so we have our final webinar is at 3 p.m. today, and it's on communicating your project. So it'll really complement what Shirley has covered there today. We'll be looking at social media, we'll be looking at engaging with your local media, photographs as well. So that might be one to bring up that GDPR question again, and how, you know, what makes a nice photograph, particularly a press photograph. So that's at 3 p.m. and the recording of all of our webinars will be available on the Heritage Week YouTube, probably by the end of this week, and we'll be sending an email around to everyone that attended as well, just to share the links with you, but also to get a little bit of feedback from you just on how you thought they went, so that we can start planning for 2022.
There's no stopping you. So great, Madeline, thank you so much for joining us today. The best of luck with your festival again this year, with combining the best of all that you've learned. Shirley, I know, will be out. We see your dog, Shirley. It hasn't gone unnoticed. Your dog is apparently terribly Zoom friendly. He's behaving terribly well in the corner. Best of luck to you too, and thank you to Catherine, the interpreter, and to the Heritage Week team. And we'll see some or all of you at 3 p.m. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.